And we're on. Delaney, welcome to the show, brother. Super grateful to have you here, man.
Lance, thank you for having me, man. I'm super excited to do this with you.
Yeah, dude. You're how old are you right now?
24.
Okay. So it's really cool to see because you know, in your 20s, it's really hard to kind of have the foresight to see how valuable and how important it is to make these changes in your life, personal development, journaling, yoga, all the stuff that you're doing, meditation. And it's really great to see at 24 that you have this stuff, that you're working on this stuff, man. Because I, at that age, I always I can only go back and speak for myself. And at 24, that was not on the radar. And I like to think like, wow, if I did have that, if that was in the process at 24, what could I have done for now? So it's great, man. And just to kind of see your story, and I really want to get into like your backstory, is that you've made this transition and you're on your way, and it's really great to see. So well done on your journey so far, brother. So where I want to start here is, let's take us right back to the beginning. You know, what was the path that you were on? Maybe walk us through young Delaney's journey. And during that time, is there a one thing that stands out, a challenge or struggle that you faced that you can now see as having a big impact on your life?
Mm, yeah, man, 100%. That's a great question. Yeah, I think like you mentioned, it is like very abnormal, right, for someone who's 24 to be like so into personal development. And when I think about like where this all came from, really like the big thing for my childhood was I actually grew up in an alcoholic household. So my parents were divorced, and I split time equally between my two households. Um, until I was 18. And my dad, he's very supportive and loving in a lot of ways, but he had and still does to this day, has a very intense alcohol problem. And I think that really, defined my childhood in a lot of ways because, like, growing up in a household that was so unstable, and I didn't know it at the time, but I developed like really intense chronic anxiety from that because it was like, you know, it was the sort of relationship where he really did want the best for me, and like his way of like doing that was like he wanted to ensure I like had a strong work ethic and knew how to like get things done. So it was very like a lot of chores, a lot of stuff to do, and it was very high standards. And maybe or maybe not the best approach, but like compounded by the idea that every day at 3 o'clock I'd come home from school, he'd come home at 4, um, and he'd pour like he drinks like Southern Comfort on the rocks, so like he would be pretty like drunk by like 5 o'clock. And it's like when he'd first get home, things were great in my life, like things were great. Oh, how's school? Yeah, whatever. And then he would like nitpick at these like and this was for like years and years, like 7-8 years of like. And then by the time he was drunk, it would just like rage would come out, and there would be these like 5-6 hour fights about either I got like a B in school or like whatever. um and I think my whole childhood, like I definitely struggled. Like that really fucked up myself. Sorry if I'm not supposed to
No,
swear
go
on the
ahead, man.
podcast.
Swear. Please do.
uh Perfect. Yeah, it really fucked up my self-worth, man. Like seriously, like I just developed a lot of like I think I was just chronically tense because like this was my like childhood household situation. So like in school, and for other reasons, like just generally, like I was a chubby kid, I was in Boy Scouts, so like social cliques was like tough for me. And I generated like a anxiety disorder that was carried with me for a long time. um and I think compounding with that too, as I like grew into high school and stuff, it's like that cycle, right? It's like I was so anxious, so tense all the time, and I didn't want to deal with those feelings. So naturally, it's that cycle of I found friends who like to drink and get fucked up. And from the time people could start driving like 15, 16 years old, I found a crew of friends who we like would drink all the time. And like that was my outlet to like, I couldn't even really talk to people sober. Like in school, I was literally scared of connection. That I would use like the ability to go out and drink on the weekends as my way of like trying to connect and try to be cool in high school. And that led to college. I went to the University of Illinois, so it was I was good in school, so I like went to a good university, joined a fraternity there, and like I was doing really well in school. But in the same way, like fraternity was my like social circle, and I still had never like put myself in a situation to develop any confidence. Um, and really, what ended up happening is like I had this circle of people and the way I connected was with drinking. And then that, grew to me, that led through college, and then, got a job in technology in Chicago. Great job. Was doing all the cool stuff, living in the coolest area, going out to clubs and bars and stuff. But like, I, again, still never like looked these things in the face. And it just got to a point where I got, it went from being a harmless thing to like, put me in a really dark place of like, one, I still had like extreme self-worth and anxiety issues. And like, I was like, that was compounding because I was using my job as a way to find fulfillment. I was being a workaholic. I was striving, it was kind of in some ways good because I was like making a name at my job. Right. And like getting promoted, but it wasn't rooted in a good place. It was rooted in like, acknowledge me so I feel worthy.
Mm.
Um, and, and I just started to feel over time that like, I felt so disconnected and shallow. Like like there was no depth. I didn't feel like really aligned. I felt like I was wearing a mask. Um, and yeah, and the partying just got more and more intense, and I just got deeper and deeper. And just like one day I woke up and realized like, if I don't change, I'm going to become my dad. Cause I realized how dependent I was, and how I was so anxious. And like, I knew I couldn't like become the person I wanted to become if I didn't start making some changes.
Man, yeah, I can completely relate. One part that really resonated with me was not being able to socialize without booze. And you kind of create this identity around that person, and you get the validation from people around you because you're getting good feedback. You're drinking and you're like, oh shit, okay, I don't really get this sober. And it feels good, right? You get validated and you create this image, and then it just becomes easier. And it's not it's not our fault, because if when things start to feel good and you get validated, then you want to do it more,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's how it happens, and then that's how it's so crazy, because we go down that loop for so long, and it's it ends up, we forget the main reason why we started in the first place. But because of the validation, because it's so normal, because you're in a fraternity before, for me it was an athlete, or I was in a bar running a bar, it's just you're getting all these validations. So it's really, and then once you stop that, when you transition out of it, you kind of have to relearn how to be a human,
Mm.
right? You have to learn, because it's hard to communicate with people when you don't know how to communicate sober. And
Yeah.
people are struggling with this on a day-to-day basis. They don't even realize it, right? And because they need something to be able to be whole. And it's like this thing of constantly filling these voids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's really what, like, so where I find it interesting is like, when you decided, so are you sober now, or do you just casually drink now and then, or
I think the pendulum swung super hard, and it's really interesting. I feel like I had a very still toxic relationship with alcohol because I like resented it so hard.
right?
And I actually would like judge friends. And if I was I couldn't like have fun in a circle where there were people drinking.
Yeah.
So I think I'm now back at a healthy place where I can have a beer. I can have like, especially when I like take my van out and go camping, like, yeah, bring some drinks and hang around the fire. Like I have a healthy relationship with
That's
it now.
important. That's important, because doing the other way and judging people for it, it's not a good idea. And you got to love people where they're at and accept them, because they're just doing their best with what they got, and where they are, their environment, their friends, that's just where they're at. And I found that important too. But I've always said, when it comes to drinking, it's like, whatever, do what's best for you. But like for me, it just doesn't work this way. It doesn't, and this is the thing too. It's like, you can't beat yourself up, because you may very well fall back into that dark place. It's really, I've seen it in my own life. I was sober a year, then went back into it, then 9 months, then went back into it. And when I met you in Tulum, I was like back into it, like where I
Mm-hmm.
was like, shit, I'm gone back in time right now. But that's when it comes to things like addictions and patterns, we really want to beat ourselves up. Like, it has to be so black and white. Like, I'm out of this now, and if I ever go back, I'm a failure. And
Mm-hmm.
it can't be like that, because it's so ingrained in us. We got to be kind with ourselves, that the journey is a long journey, and we may very well have a setback,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
dude. 100%.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, for myself, like, appreciate you sharing that. And I think like what I found in myself, and I just like, and if I still felt so much shame around this, especially as I was stepping into a life coach, like feeling like I had to be this perfect human being. But it's like I was carrying around this like 10-pound thing of shame around me that I felt like I needed to be perfect. But like in reality, when I did stop drinking and I cut that out, and I was like, yeah, like kind of feeling good about that.
Yeah.
I literally had an eating disorder develop to take place of that shame and unworthiness. And then that was something I struggled with for so long. And still like, it like bleeps up on the radar sometimes. If I'm like pushing myself too hard and I have a lot of stress, I have these tendencies. Um, and like, yeah, it's a thing.
What was it that really did it for you? Was there somebody that, when you were in those one of those dark moments, that you looked up to, or was there a book? Because there's usually that spot, where we're the rock bottom, either a really bad hangover, or some people get thrown in
Mm.
jail, some people break a leg, some people smash their face on the ground. I don't know. There's all these different things. Like, but what was there, or somebody inspires them or something? What was the thing that really switched it for you?
Yeah.
Was there
So
a specific situation or person or?
Yeah, so I would say the defining turning point, it was like a weird, like you could say like spiritual experience for sure. It was
Mm.
after one specific night of partying. Like we lived in this pretty big apartment in Chicago, and it was like the hub of all our frat friends. So every weekend we were hosting the thing, and it was like bar, club, and then like after party with like, people are doing like drugs and stuff like till like 5 in the morning. And it was like one of those nights. And I remember waking up the next day and just like felt an emptiness I've never felt in my life. And I just remember laying in bed and like literally a voice that wasn't me saying like, you need to go to, it was a Sunday, you need to go to church today. And I grew up Lutheran, but I like kind of resented it a little bit, never really felt connected.
Hmm.
I was like, I just knew like, I was fortunate in that I had some perspective. Like my dad was that way, but my mom, who I also live with, especially like after I was 18, when I would go home from college, live with her, she was like very she's a role model for me. And like luckily having her there, I realized like that's my North Star more or less. If I keep doing this, I'm gonna become like my dad. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna I don't know, I literally don't know what the road out of this is, but something needs to change. And apparently it's church today.
Hmm.
And yeah, that just started like a whole, it was church. Literally, I went to this like non-denominational, like kind of millennial church for like 6 months. I felt like, well, probably longer than 6 months, but I felt so out of my element. I was like too afraid to speak there. Like I didn't like talk to or make eye contact with anybody for like probably 2 months. But like along that time, like you mentioned too, that was the pivot point. But then it was just like stumbling into the right, so like just being curious. And it was like picking up books, like knowing I need new data, new information, new people in my life if things are going to change. And I didn't know what it was going to be, but it was just like committing to change and
Hmm.
committing to that exploration.
How did you feel when you made that decision, and how were your friends and the people around you? Was it a gradual thing, or were you literally like, I got to cut these people out of my life because
Ooh,
they're not serving me anymore? And
good.
what was the reaction to that?
Yeah, good question. No, it was not. And I kind of love talking about, this. It was not like a abrupt stop. So I continue to live with those guys for, it must have been like at least 2 more months. And it was like, it was one of those things that it was just like, it's like the 1% everyday thing. It was like,
Mm.
so committing to going to church on Sundays gave me just enough separate, like it's really hard to say no to your friends. And like,
Yeah.
I did not change overnight by any means. There were so many days out, but it was like that commitment to like at 9 a.m. or whatever, I'm going to go to church, gave me a little bit of separation Saturday night to not stay up till 5 in the morning, right? Because I made that commitment to
Mm.
myself. Or I had a reason to say like no to my friends to go out and drink. And like, but I would backslide all the time. I would go out and get really drunk, and then I would either miss church or show up super hungover and then have a really tough day. But it was like slowly over time that those habits started to form. And it was like that's why I'm a huge proponent of like journaling and just being really intentional with planning. Like I started committing to every week I'm going to do something out of my comfort zone, because it was that same thing, like just throw new variables in, like figure out what's going to replace this. And it was like making commitments to going and doing new things gave me that structure to say no to the things that would otherwise pull me in if I didn't have, intention behind it all.
What feedback did you get though, positive or negative, from your people around
Oh,
you?
right.
Like, did you get,
Um,
because a lot of times whenever anybody wants to pivot, they get feedback from their friends and then they get scared because, you'll get because when you're changing, it's forcing other people to see you different. So it makes them change too. So
right.
they get uncomfortable. They get fucked up because, well, I know you as this person. And if you change, that means that changes my whole dynamic. Did you have
Yeah.
any resistance or did things kind of just, some people don't, man. Like some people
Yeah.
just see your journey and they support you, what was that like as far as your environment?
Yeah, that's interesting. So in that arena, I probably had like 20 or 30 like frat friends, but I think the one thing that I guess blessing or curse is I didn't have anyone that I was like so deeply connected to in that circle
Mm.
that really felt like there was no like hard resistances. I think it was more just me creating separation. And for sure, actually, I mean, like in a playful way, I got a lot of shit all the time. Like we'd be out and I would be like consciously not drinking.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and it was a time where like people saw me like starting to like blog about personal development and stuff. So I would get shit, but like I honestly just made a decision to like not give a fuck. I was like, okay, cool. You know what? I actually feel like I know what's best for me. So like eventually it got to a point where it's hard. It is super
Yeah.
hard, but eventually you do enough work that like, people's opinions stop mattering.
Good for you, because that's the thing. And that's my point, is in your 20s, a lot of people just aren't aren't ready to do that at that age, because you usually don't wake up until you're in your 30s, when you're kind of like, it doesn't fucking matter what anyone thinks. But
Mm-hmm.
in your 20s, a lot of people still really care about what people think, right? And that's because we get validation from that. That's our feedback, right? And it's hard to challenge the narrative when everybody's thinking one way and you want to go do your own thing. So that's why it's really interesting to see a younger generation figuring this shit out earlier,
Yeah.
because it usually takes a lot longer,
Right.
right? You got to learn the hard lesson a lot longer for the most cases.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in my like experience, it just is like a product of pain. Like if I was like
Yeah.
super smooth with like girls or like, more had a different things unfolded differently and I just had like way more confidence growing up, I don't think I would be like at this point. So it's like kind of like you mentioned, it's like ended up being grateful for those like pains when I was a child because it's like that's what gave me the opportunity to become really, really intentional with my life.
Talk us about Talk to us about your journey that you've been doing through travel. How has that been? Because you were just recently in India, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So it
Walk
has
us
been
through that, because that's,
India.
or any of the travel that you've had throughout there that's really had a shift in how you look at the world, and
Yeah,
how,
man.
because look, you're a coach now,
Yeah,
and the more experience you have, the better, right?
sure.
And how has that shaped you? Walk us through
So
that a
much,
little bit.
man. Yeah, I'll dabble on just like a few things. I'll definitely talk to you about India because I think it's pretty hilarious, like
Mm.
experience. I would say one of the first like big. I've done a good amount of travel. Like I studied abroad and went to Europe for 6 months. But I would say one of the first impactful trips I had that really helped me question kind of this narrative I had built was I went to Chile. I think this was like mid 2018, and I went to Patagonia, so it's like really remote southern tip of Chile, southern tip of South America. Um, and they have just these like beautiful, untouched, like monumental mountain range. And it literally is like a God experience. Like I was just like hiking and I had met a couple people on the trail and I literally had like, like 10 belongings, but like I had this like bliss come over me and it's something I just never felt in my life. And I think that just like cracked me open spiritually a little bit that it's like it's more than what we perceive.
Mm.
Um,
What was
and
that, do you think? Let's tap into that a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
What was that? Now that you know what you know, now that you know what you're learning, what do you think that was?
It was just a pure sense of peace, man. It was like there was the simplicity aspect of like I have like, there's no worry going on in my mind right now. And like I think just connection in nature. I know you talk
Presence.
about it. Yeah, presence, and just like the trifecta of that with just connection, like just talking to some really great people, and being able to just be yourself,
Mm.
um, without all the crazy other bullshit going on around you.
Mm.
It was incredible. Um, but actually, what maybe have even been more powerful on that trip, I spent some time in like the actual city, and I got to stay with a mutual friend who I knew through a guy in college. But I stayed with his family, and like so it was there and in India, but there was the first time I saw it. It was like there were multiple times where I had to like double take at like groups of people, and double take in the sense that I was like, what did I just see? I've never seen that before. And then when I'd look back, it's like pure bliss and joy in their faces. But then you look at the situation they're in, and they're in like squalor, like so
Mm.
poor, sitting down at like a picnic table, eating like and it's because they're able to just literally sit at a table and enjoy a meal with their family and friends.
Mm.
Puts like a smile on their face that like actually made me stop in my tracks to like relook at it, right? And like that probably was even more shattering than the hiking part of the trip, because that really made me question, like, I've never even seen that kind of happiness. Like, very rarely do I in America see that. So it's like, what do I not have right about how I see the world? And I think this was around a time where I was being like um, really driven by my corporate career, and like my parents, like, my mom like climbed the corporate ladder, like very successful. So that was sort of what I was basing a lot of my decisions off of. And just like, that's kind of the cultural narrative.
Yeah.
So that was an early sign that that was right when I started like getting into like blogging and personal development, like exploring that stuff a little bit deeper. Um, so that alone was like an aha moment that there's something wrong with my worldview.
Mm. Yeah, that happiness doesn't come from having more or achievements and all that. There's something deeper than that. The presence of like just being grateful for the simple things. I noticed that when I was in Indonesia as well. It's in Bali. I think it was on one of the islands, maybe Gili T or something. Anyway, just seeing the families and just seeing how little they have, yet the joy in their faces, and it's really amazing.
Mm.
And I know that feeling. I've felt that a few times in different places. And then you ask yourself, like, why? Like, what is the problem? Like you said, is having more shit actually the thing that's bringing me the fulfillment? And man, when we can get clear on that and realize that it's actually the simplest things that bring us the bliss. Like you said, being out in nature and feeling that, like, wow, I'm present, good conversation. It's just brings this magic, and it's like your soul just being like, great job, you're doing good. Like, this is what you want,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
it's like that's what we seek, right? That's the journey, right? And I think that, I've learned this a lot too. It is embracing the journey, and it's the presence and the being grateful for where exactly you are,
Hmm.
rather than, of course we want to chase the goal. We want to be successful. We want to help a lot of people, but like that getting to that thing isn't the thing. It's
Hmm.
the journey and the fulfillment, that the feelings that we remember along the way, right? And just telling me that, like, it's that emotional trigger that you get that makes you remember that moment, right? You can
Yes,
literally remember how you felt when you were seeing these people or when you're on that mountain, right? That is like, it's priceless.
it is. It is. Yeah, and it's interesting too, and I think you did hit the nail on the head that the most important thing is being grateful for those things we have, and it can be applied in like a daily practice, like journaling, or just like sitting some. And that's the one thing I found really interesting is like I always resented religion, and I just thought it was kind of bullshit or whatever. But then
Mhm.
I started to realize that praying is essentially just a regular gratitude practice,
I
which is
know.
like scientifically validated. So now I'm like, I can get behind prayer,
Dude,
and I
me
have,
too. Me
yeah,
too.
right, right. It's so interesting. It's like, oh, that's what they're doing, and that's why it works. Okay, cool. You don't have to be
Yeah,
talking to the man in the sky. You could be if
you
that's what you
could
want.
totally. It's because religion was created as it has to be one way, and if it's not like that, you're wrong, or it's like some sort of weird like negativity towards it. But you're right. As you start to learn, the word God and the word spirituality and all of it just kind of becomes all the same. It's like whatever you choose to if you, whatever you call it, praying, gratitude, I mean, it's all the same shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it
And it's like,
really is. It's just connecting.
yeah, God can be the person you're speaking to, or it can be the feeling. It's the feeling inside of you, doing that practice. It's like that feeling of love.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is I can really get behind and respect people. If you're in a religion and that's what you really believe in, that's great. Like, well done. You're committed to that. That's awesome. But then, you got to respect that other people have their practice.
Mm,
Just for anybody to take the time to just stick to something like that, I find is awesome. And
yeah.
I just, and it doesn't have to be one way, but the fact that you're taking the time to be mindful and grateful for what you have and to connect. And it's funny because the spiritual path and reading a lot of these books, it's kind of taken that weird word God, and it's like it's made it okay and not taboo. Like,
Yeah.
like that religion. Oh, you're religious. Oh, I don't believe. Because I didn't say. I for a long time I didn't believe in God. I was like, oh, it doesn't make sense. Like God, but now I get it.
Mm,
Like I get it
yeah.
differently. You know what I mean?
And it's because you've looked at enough different perspectives or takes on it that you can create a flavor of it that works for you, right? Like you get to
Totally.
create the way you align and resonate with it.
Yeah, and I've just seen it in my own life on how things happen, and I just can't. There's just too much. There's too much. There's too much. There's too much out there for our minds to even grasp, to think that there's not.
I'm with you, man.
it's
100%. The highs and lows of it all, man.
it's really crazy. And I'm, probably what I started kind of getting, I've been tapping in and out of this probably for the last 6 years, right? Like in and out, but really deep in the last two. And, you know, it just makes me realize that I have so much more to learn, and I'm just scratching the surface, right? Like, and it all comes down to figuring out ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
really.
100%, man. That's that's how I feel, like for sure. It's like, ooh, I don't know what I'm getting into, but I know I like it and I know I want more of it. So let's go.
Yeah. So again, so let's talk us through your coaching and why that is something that you felt called to.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, for sure. Um, it's actually really interesting how it all came up. By no stretch of the imagination was this like a well formulated, thought out plan for me. Um, and it really did happen really synchronistically. So I'd been doing like personal development blogging for a long time,
mhm.
for probably like over 2 years, and it was more just like that idea of like I want to reinforce these things I'm learning, and I enjoy writing, and I have a marketing background, so this is just a cool like creative project for me. But I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a vision, and you know, um, I left Chicago last October, and I've been living in a van, traveling around, and since then, and when I was in Colorado last November, I was skiing, and I just really random chance met this woman who was super cool. We skied together all day, and she was a life coach. Went to some like Ivy League school, super intelligent, and she was just like, this was the most synchronistic thing ever. And I didn't even think I believed in that before this, but um, you know, after our conversation, I just thought what she was doing was super cool, and it just got my wheels spinning. Like that's how you actually make a lot. Like it's cool to blog, but who's reading that? Like what impact is it having? It's like this is how you make it real. Life coaching. And in that same conversation, she told me about Aubrey Marcus, and literally the next day, um, I got two ads on my computer. One was for a life coaching certification, and I followed that and got certified. And at the same time, I got an ad for Fit for Service. And without knowing who Aubrey Marcus is, I pulled the trigger and spent $12,000 on a year-long program because it just felt really right, and it was like a way to connect with other entrepreneurs. So like that weird combination of like, so I guess fast forward 2 months, like the beginning of this year, starting Fit for Service, having gotten like formally trained as a life coach, but still not really like I have the tools, but I still really hadn't figured out, the how of how, I was going to start actually building this business. Um, but being able to be surrounded by some incredible people like you and like all the other members of Fit for Service, um, and really developing those like business development skills. Yeah, man. Um, I don't know. I feel like I kind of worked around your question a little bit, but
That's all right.
uh, trying to circle that back and really hit it home. Yeah, I just for me, like I was working this corporate job, didn't feel like it really. I knew for sure it did not align with the person I'm meant to become, and it's been that thing of like there's been like 3 or 4. I've like tried to start like 4 other businesses, and it was like, oh, I kind of like this. Okay, I've done it for 2 months, realizing it's not really what I'm meant to do, and like I've just like honed and narrowed a little bit, and then life coaching was like the aha one. Um, and I felt like when I had done enough personal work and internal work to realize like this is the root of my deepest pain, like the deepest work I've done for myself, and
Mhm.
that's the gift I have to share with other people.
How do you deal with imposter syndrome? Because I know coaches
Yes,
have it all
yes,
the time.
man.
And
That's a
like,
good question too. You know what? My spiritual practice has like I wouldn't say blossomed in that it's like a perfected thing, but I spend so much time doing things like yoga, meditating, journaling, like collectively probably like 3 or 4 hours a day between all those things. And it helps me like get really grounded to myself. And it's not like in chunks, but it's like throughout the day, just like regrounding my body, taking walks. Like Charlotte from Fit for Service showed me this really dope, like conscious rapper. So like listen to his music about spirituality and just all these things to remind me like I'm having huge growing pains because, like, I actually stepped away from Fit for Service, to, like, become part of this other like coaching accelerator program,
mhm.
and I'm being pushed super hard, and I'm having to do a lot, and like, yeah, like we're getting challenged to really get out there, and it's like it is one thing to just like I feel like I've definitely over time like developed this trait of like it's good to fail, right? It's good to just get out there, so like being able to reframe failure in a way that you like seek it.
Mhm.
Um,
Because it's feedback. Failure is feedback. Like you're just,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I think for me with imposter syndrome, it's like literally that essence of like Eastern spirituality of you are not your thoughts. And like doing enough practice to be able to have the presence to like let that thought come up and then create space to react to it and or to not react to it. To just
Mm.
like be like, okay, I can tell I'm feeling like great example when I'm like reaching out to potential clients. Um, I had realized that I was for a while I had this story in my head that I could only help people who were like really 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 struggling, and like I'm a young coach, so I'm not valid or valued enough to like coach someone who's already like successful but could use support and getting to that next level. And through the coach that I've hired and just through my own self work, like being able to realize those are just stories. And when you're able to set that high goal for yourself, and I'm reading this book right now called like I think Quantum Leap, and it's like what would it look like to have 100% belief in you getting that outcome, and then and then your job is to just like take all the swipe away all the thoughts that don't align with that, because most people are like they have an idea but they come up with all the reasons on why it can't work, and it's how do you flip
Totally.
that around and just like put full faith in that it will work, and then surrendering what it's going to look like to get there.
Dude, yeah, I really like what you said about the time that you take to kind of the spiritual practices, because at the end of the day, doing that stuff is helping you stay in your truth, connect to your soul, which is your truth. And as a coach, essentially, you're just being you and you're helping people discover what they already have within them. You're not giving them anything, right? That's what people think. It's like you're not giving, everybody has what they have within them to get through the shit that they need to get through, right? It's, and to be able to just, the more you can ground yourself, like you're saying, and step into the role of being a coach, once people can see that you're in your truth, then that is good, and that is enough to be. And you only
Mm,
need to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of the person you're coaching too. This is straight
exactly.
from Seth Godin. These are the 2 things that Seth Godin talks about that I really resonated with. Number one is imposter syndrome is normal, because you're trying to
Yes.
be somebody. You have to have some degree of imposter syndrome, because you have to get to somebody, you have to elevate yourself, so you also have to be okay with it. I don't even like that word, because it's like, yeah, well, I want to be better, so of course I'm going to have to be somebody
You have
else.
to
But
stretch.
put yourself in the position of the person that has $1 million business, coaching business, would act like this. So I'm going to have to act like that person already, right?
Mhm.
Now. And there is a degree of imposter syndrome, but it doesn't exist if you believe in yourself fully. And to believe in yourself fully, you do the grounding stuff, like you said. And the reason I can resonate with this is it's so true, because when I don't do that stuff as well, I feel off and I feel like I'm not really being me.
Mm.
And the other thing that he says is that um where was I even going with that? There was two things with Seth Godin that I was gonna say. Shit, had a mind block there.
I'm trying to help you, but I don't remember
Anyways,
either.
yeah, no, it's where I'm getting at is like at the end of the day, if you're in your truth, if you're aligned with what you're doing, you don't have to be like a lot of times we think we all need to be at Tony Robbins level to coach, including myself, right? But there's always people that are a few steps behind that you can help. And as you go in each person, you gain more confidence and you step into your power. And that's how it works,
Yeah,
right? But
man.
it's a constant evolution of working on the daily steps in order to get to that next level, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, man, it's super important. So like for programming yourself, let's get specific on some of the stuff. Like let's say somebody's listening and they're around your age and they're kind of like they want to start making a change. They want to get out of like, that sort of scene that we were both in. What are some
Mhm.
practices that you can recommend?
Sure. Yeah, I think the most valuable thing is just buy a journal, right? And like
Yeah.
and spend be intentional. And I can give some definite examples, but in a general sense, just like carve out time every week to just sit down and give yourself space to reflect.
Mm,
And that's the feedback loop. And I really don't think anything changes long term for good until we have a feedback loop where we can assess, okay, how do I think and feel about all these things that are happening in my life. But I would say generally, the first step is getting really clear on what you want. So like taking out a journal and just reflecting, like that one of the exercises I love to do with my clients is like think 5 years ahead and take away all limitations. What would you love your life to look like if time, money, and resources didn't matter? And then think about your relationship. Where do you want to live? How do you want to be spending your time? How do you want to feel when you wake up every day? All these things. And it's more of just a creative exercise to like pull you out of what you're in now. And it's interesting when you get to the end of that exercise and you've really pushed the person to like really think big. 9 times out of 10, literally every 5 years is a long freaking time, right? So it's like I think people just get so stuck in their limiting beliefs. That's like when you
mm,
sit down and journal on like, what are your hopes and dreams? It's like, it just puts it into the realm of possibility. Like if you can put it on a piece of paper, it has a potential to exist even in your own mind. And it's like that gets the wheels spinning. Um, and I think then it's just like, getting more practical. It's just getting really clear on what's keeping you stuck, what are like the toxic habits and relationships, and what can we start to do to like move that needle 1%. So it's like, is there a relationship I need to distance from? Do I have a support network? Do I have someone I can talk to about my challenges or my dreams? And if the answer is no to any of that, it's like, well, how do we get there? Is there someone in my circle that I just need to be more intentional to go out and connect with? um, or doing like going finding a support group, something like that. But like, and I think maybe the third thing too is just like really practical, like nail those good habits of being able to manage your time. Like if you learn how to manage your time or be intentional with your time, you can essentially make any change in your life. Like if you don't need to know what the thing is, but if you can have a practice and it'll come over time. But like, for me, when I was doing this, like I committed to like 52 weeks of comfort zone, getting out of my comfort zone and like sitting down Sunday nights, for a half hour and thinking about what day am I going to commit to going and doing something. And it's like, at the end of the day, the last thing we own is our time. And it's like, if we can be intentional with our time, we can change.
mm. Yeah, that's so true. And it's so easy to get lost in time wasting activities, especially on our phones too.
Yeah, it sucks you in. It's
Yeah,
horrendous. Like I'm even afraid to still look at like, that part of your phone that tells you how many hours you spend on it a day.
dude. Yeah. And the dangerous thing is a lot of times, including myself, oh, I got to work from my phone. But there's a lot of shit that's definitely not work on there. And yeah, it really is. It comes down to time management. And the people I've talked to that get the most shit done schedule everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
and this is something that I'm really struggling with in my life, is really keeping organized with all the shit, all the moving pieces, and like really like making sure to stick to the schedule, because when you work for yourself, it's really easy to go, I can do it later. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but you're just, what you're doing is you're telling yourself that what you're saying doesn't matter, and it's okay to
The
slip,
integrity.
right?
Yeah.
And it's okay to cut corners. And really, we're only trying to beat our yesterday's self today,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's nobody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the game gets even more complex because then it's like, well, where does self-compassion fall into that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
where's it's a gray area of like, how, like, where am I really doing myself a disservice, or, where am I even, causing myself more pain by not allowing myself to make a mistake once in a while.
That's a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up, because there's two sides to that. One is like being disciplined and committing to what you say is actually a form of self love, because then you're actually reaffirming to yourself that you matter and what you say matters. And
Yes.
then it actually opens up more free time for you. So then in
Yes.
the end, it's the freedom. Discipline equals freedom, right? Like Jocko Willing talks about.
Yeah.
But then we think sometimes, oh, go easy on myself. It doesn't matter. But then that is sending a message to your that it doesn't matter. So then you feel this feeling of, I don't keep promises with myself.
Mm,
And then you kind of feel bad. So you actually think you're being nice to yourself by not being
sticky.
disciplined. But then it
Hmm.
ends up sitting there and thinking, shit, I should have got that done.
Yep. Just
I'm kind of,
murky in the back of your head.
yeah. So there's two sides to that, which really is really interesting, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. As you bring that up, it makes me think then maybe, well, maybe the focus then is like, just be so intentional.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to make a commitment, stick to it and see it out, but also know yourself and know your limits. And like maybe when I'm sitting down to plan my tomorrow, I won't force that workout in because I know it'll just bring me deeper in like the emotional rabbit hole. Like maybe tomorrow I need to plan an off day. So it's
Yeah.
like, but if you're going to commit, show up, no excuses, get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, maybe a good way to do that too is reward yourself for doing the things that you said too, because and then that gives yourself a
Mm,
little bit of grace. Like, in between this time, if I get these things done, then if I can see those check marks done and those things are done, then I'm going to reward myself. So then you're giving yourself kindness, yet you're still doing that. And even saying that right now is like helping me, because I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh shit, do both,
yeah,
right? The commitment leads to the reward.
100%.
I
In
don't
my
get the
mind, I'm like,
reward.
yeah, in my mind, I'm like Halo Top ice cream all the way. Let's
Yeah.
go.
How good is that stuff?
Dude, that is my like Achilles heel. But dude, when the weekend comes around, it's going down.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So let's talk about right now. So you're in a van, you're living in a van.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Talk us through present day, like, all right, with everything you got going on, what's the biggest struggle you're going through?
Oh man, really interesting concept.
And
There's
talk
a
us about
lot.
the COVID stuff too.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's
yeah.
package all
So,
that.
just some like, just a quick overview of like where I'm at. So, um, I've been coaching, for about 6 months now, like formally. Um, so right now, and I've been traveling around in a van. Got to California the day before COVID happened, and I was like not paying attention to any of this. So, no idea what I was gonna do. I like shower, Planet Fitness. I'll like go to like coffee shops to do work. When I'm working remotely. And yeah, thank God, like we have this mutual friend, Corey, who's my age, and we connected in Tulum through Fit for Service. I was like, dude, can I come crash on your couch for a couple of days? I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. Um, I'm all the way across the country. I'm so far from my home, and it ended up being perfect. And I really realized the value of being surrounded by the people who align with you and your values and um, your interests. Because we're both entrepreneurial. He's an extremely driven, has incredible character, and
Yeah, he does.
and he just works so hard, and it like motivates me. And I've learned, and I've grown more in the last 3 months and in the last year or so, it's been incredible. But it's good because we balance each other out. He's so driven, and I love to cook, so I'm like making him meals, and that's like my rent payment, so it's great. um but yeah, not just aside from that, it's been really good. I had to make the tough decision to step away from Fit for Service for a semester, but deep down I knew I'm ready to take this coaching business to the next level. And to do so, I have the tools to coach and I have the experience, but I don't know business development. I don't know how to build a business.
Mm.
So I pivoted and I hired a coach to teach me those skills. And it's been a beautiful experience. Things are really flowing and starting to really make an impact on people's lives. So that has been great. But at the same time, I think my biggest thing right now, it's continuing to grow and scale, and just develop my own coaching practice, my own flavor of coaching. But at the same time, it's I think I got exactly what I needed out of van life, and I want to keep it and make it a part of me. But also I'm realizing the idea of stability and oh, I know where I'm going to get Wi-Fi today. And I can sit down in Corey's place and record my video series, right? Um, when I started van life, it was to create a blank slate and explore what my life might, what are all the potentialities for my life. And in the last 6 months, I really feel like I have a clear vision, clear purpose. And now I'm like, let's execute, let's make this impact, let's support people, and create community. Um, so I really do think the next thing on my radar is I've actually fallen in love with California, and I think I'm going to be, my next thing is what am I building and where am I going to build it? Because living in the van is no longer a necessary step for that. I want to keep it and still have the opportunity to get out in nature, but I'm ready to really, take everything to the next level.
You probably have a new sense of gratitude as well for all the little things, right?
100%, man. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. And then it's funny because I always would never actually watch those videos that are put on YouTube of 10 things they don't want you to know about van life. Unconsciously, I just didn't want to even know those things. And now it's okay, realizing that it's super cool. It's a great experience. And you're put in some really intense mental and emotional situations when you're alone a lot. You don't have all these busy, it was literally I was quarantining before quarantine was cool. It's secluded all the time.
Yeah.
And you face yourself, man. You face yourself. And it's I really think that experience is where a lot of clarity came from for me and what I'm called to do.
Good for you, man. If everybody wants to find out about you and learn more about you, follow your journey, where can they find you?
Yeah, man. Instagram is probably the best place. I've got, all my coaching content there. And then there's links to my podcast, and to book a free coaching call with me. So that's at forgeyourpath_ on Instagram.
Who is your target audience and what kind of impact do you want to make in the world with them?
Right. So generally, I specialize in supporting millennials and entrepreneurs um, so my coaching program is a lifestyle optimization program. So essentially what that means is getting clarity on what you want in your life, but using routine and habit, like we talked about today, as a mechanism for getting there. Because it's so lofty to say, create your dream life. How? It's routine and habit. It's those 90% of things that we show up and repeat every day are how we get there. And it's doing it with intentionality and clarity. And in the process, people who struggle with stress, burnout, it's how do we create that, first create that sense of well-being and balance in our life. And then from there, be really intentional on moving forward. What kind of life do we want to create? And stop letting fear and doubt hold us back.
Awesome, man.
Yeah,
Awesome. Love it.
dude.
I wanted to ask you that because I wanted to hear your elevator pitch. It's good.
Yeah.
It's important, right? It's important. Sometimes and I think it's great. I think it's one thing to tell people, to coach people and tell them, oh yeah, the setting the goals is all that is important, but it's the daily habits that
Mhm.
it's the little things you do every day that make up the big things.
100%. And it's
You
like,
know, it's
yeah.
consistency over time.
And how much confidence does that create? It's like when you stop caring about the things you can't control and you're like,
Yeah.
as long as I've done the work to know that if I get this done today,
Yeah.
I'm taking my step and like, we're going to get there. You know, it's confidence. It's a deep rooted confidence you get from that.
Yeah, man. Out of all the challenges and adversity you've gone through, for a takeaway for the audience, what is one lesson that adversity has taught you?
The importance of leaning into your fear, like one, being able to sit with your fear and acknowledge it and get clear on what the things that aren't playing out the way you want in your life. It's probably rooted in fear. So getting clear on
Mm,
what are the things that, you know, we're afraid of facing and looking at, and just getting so intimate with them, to be honest. Like, one of the most impactful books I've read is Fearvana, and it really just goes into understanding what fear is and how it affects us, like in very simple terms. But um and just making it a practice to constantly push our comfort zone and be like, literally in doing so, become the person who embraces fear for growth and reframes fear as an opportunity to become the person we want to be. Because if we can't learn to have a good, like a positive relationship with fear, I think it's really, really challenging to create the life we want to live.
love it, brother. Dude, thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming on.
Lance, man, thank you for having me on, dude. I totally appreciate it.
D-
Love talking to you, man.
Man, you're gonna do big things. I'm excited for you. You know,
Thanks, man.
I it's great to see and super proud of you, man. Like, just keep it up. You
Dude.
know, like you're gonna impact a lot of people, and you know, I think a lot of people that we've met in this program are up to some amazing shit. And
Yeah.
I really admire that you were able to pivot and go do something that you felt you needed more. And that's important, right? Like, you felt the call to learn more about business.
Mm-hmm.
Got to do that. You got to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. And that self-awareness is going to get people from people that aren't successful to successful, is knowing that and listening to that. So well done on that, brother.
Thanks, brother. I'll be back. I'll be seeing you soon.
Absolutely.
Cool,
Thanks,
cool.
everybody.